The faint glow of neon signs flickered against the darkening Carolina sky as Terrence pulled his dusty pickup into the gravel lot outside Elliott's Tap Room, a modest watering hole tucked just off Highway 74. The place wasn't much, but it was steady, a home base for locals, truckers, and road-weary souls chasing a cold drink and a quiet corner. It had been a week since Terrence returned from deployment. He wasn't looking for conversation or comfort, just a moment to breathe before re-entering the rhythms of civilian life. He stepped out of the truck, boots crunching on gravel, and pushed open the creaky wooden door. A warm wave of chatter and the low croon of Johnny Cash spilled out, wrapping around him like a familiar jacket. The jukebox hummed near the bar, and the air smelled of beer, wood polish, and faint tobacco. Terrence scanned the room. A couple of regulars hunched over a game of pool. A group laughed too loudly near the bar. A few loners sat with their thoughts and pints in hand. He didn't come here to talk, just to sit. To exist. He found a corner table near the back, half hidden but with a good view of the room. His camouflage fatigues melded with the dim lighting, though his scuffed sneakers gave him away. Comfort over appearance. He ordered a glass of water and sipped it slowly, letting his mind drift to home, to his mother's cooking, to his niece's high-pitched excitement. He could almost hear her laughter now. Then the front door slammed open. 6 men strode in, their boots heavy against the worn floorboards, older, weathered. Their leather jackets bore patches and insignias worn proudly, defiantly. Veterans. They were loud, slapping backs and trading jokes as they claimed their space at the bar. Terrence glanced their way briefly, then returned to his drink. But one of them didn't just glance. A burly man with a salt and pepper beard and eyes sharp enough to cut glass froze mid-laugh. His gaze locked onto Terrence. He leaned toward his group, muttered something, and the mood shifted. Their laughter faded, replaced by a stillness that prickled at the air. The room didn't fall silent, but it felt like it had. Terrence felt their eyes on him. He didn't look up. He just kept sipping his water. He'd seen that look before. The one that measured you without asking a single question, that judged without knowing the story. Terrence sipped his water, eyes fixed on the jukebox, trying to let Johnny Cash drown out the unease slowly seeping into his bones. At the bar, the group had drawn in tighter. Their voices were low but sharp, edged with something that cut across the room like static. The burly leader leaned in, murmured something, and one of the others chuckled darkly, tossing a glance toward Terrence that lingered too long. Terrence didn't flinch. His body was still, his posture relaxed, but every nerve was tuned. Years of service had taught him how to hold his ground, how to read a room and brace for what might come. Still, the weight of their stares pressed heavy on him. What had started as a quiet escape was shifting, becoming something else entirely. The jukebox hummed faintly in the background, but even that comforting noise couldn't mask the sound of boots. Heavy, deliberate. The group was moving toward him. Terrence didn't need to look up to feel it. The shift in atmosphere, the charged energy threading through the space. The leader, salt and pepper beard catching glints of neon, was at the front. His eyes were locked on Terrence like a hawk sizing up a threat. Conversations stuttered. The bartender hesitated mid-pour, his hand hovering over a bottle. A couple of regulars at the pool table paused, their cues frozen in mid-aim. The room, once filled with the soft buzz of laughter and glasses clinking, had grown unnaturally still. Terrence sat quiet, waiting. Terrence set his glass down and leaned back slightly, the movement casual, almost lazy, but beneath the calm, every muscle had drawn taut with quiet readiness. "Hey," the leader barked, halting just a few feet from the table. His voice was rough, gravel rubbed over concrete, laced with disdain and something more dangerous underneath. "Nice uniform you got there. What did you do, pick it up at a Halloween store?" The men behind him chuckled, low, mocking, the kind of laughter meant to provoke. Terrence looked up, his expression steady, unbothered. He'd heard worse, much worse. "It's mine," he said simply. "Earned it." The leader raised an eyebrow, all faux surprise and theatrical skepticism. "Earned it, huh? That's funny, 'cause I've met a lot of real soldiers. None of them wear sneakers with their camo. You trying to score sympathy points? Or hoping someone buys your water?" Terrence's jaw tensed, just for a moment. But when he spoke, his voice was calm, controlled. "I don't need sympathy, and I sure as hell don't need a drink. I'm just here to enjoy my evening." The leader took a step closer, close enough that Terrence could smell the stale beer on his breath. His smirk twisted, more sneer than smile. "You don't look like no soldier to me," the man sneered. "Where are your boots? Your tags? Hell, bet you don't even know how to salute properly." Another voice piped up behind him. Bet he couldn't tell us the first thing about basic. Probably never even seen a battlefield, someone else added. The group burst into laughter, sharp, ugly. It grated against the soft hum of the jukebox, slicing through the bar's uneasy quiet. Terrence didn't flinch. His eyes moved slowly between them, steady and unblinking. He wasn't intimidated, but he wasn't about to take the bait either. Years in the service had taught him discipline, not just in the field, but in moments like this, especially in moments like this.
Still, something about their tone, so smug, so certain, cut deeper than he expected. It wasn't just the disrespect, it was the ignorance, the arrogance of men who should have known better. "I don't need to prove anything to you," Terrence said, his voice low and controlled, each word placed with intention. The leader's smirk faded, replaced by something darker. Annoyance flared in his eyes as he stepped in even closer, his broad frame casting a long shadow over the table. "You think you're some kind of hero?" he spat. "Just walk in here like you belong, like you've earned a seat at the table?" His voice was a growl now. "I don't think you do." The bar seemed to freeze. A held breath, glasses stilled mid-air. A waitress paused in the middle of clearing a table. Even the jukebox felt quieter. Terrence sat motionless, his gaze locked with the man's, still calm, still unreadable. But something had shifted, and everyone could feel it. Terrence met the man's gaze, unflinching. "I've served 3 tours overseas," he said, voice steady, but with a sharp edge underneath. "I don't need your approval to belong anywhere." The laughter died. For a beat, silence took hold. The leader hesitated, his bravado flickering as the weight of Terrence's words landed. But pride was a stubborn thing, and it wouldn't let him back down. He scoffed. "Yeah? Prove it. Show us your tags, otherwise you're just a liar playing dress-up." Terrence's eyes shifted to the others. Their swagger had faded, replaced with uncertain glances. Doubt had crept in, but none of them had the guts to speak against their leader. He exhaled slowly, keeping his voice even. "I don't owe you proof," he said, "but if you think starting something here is smart, I'd suggest you think again." The tension in the room grew thick, suffocating. Behind the bar, the bartender's hand hovered near the phone, ready. A couple of patrons subtly moved back from their stools. No one spoke, but everyone felt it, the moment tightening like a drawn bowstring. The leader didn't back down. Instead, his smirk returned, sharper now, tinged with something meaner. "You've got a smart mouth," he growled. "Let's see if it's as fast as your fists." The room froze. The silence stretched, thin, electric. Then he lunged. Reckless and clumsy, his hand shot toward Terrence's collar. More bark than bite, more ego than skill. But it was enough. Terrence didn't think. He didn't need to. Years of training surged to the surface, smooth and instinctual. With a swift, precise motion, Terrence sidestepped the clumsy grab, catching the man's wrist mid-air. In one fluid motion, he twisted the arm behind the man's back and used his weight to drive him forward, pinning him face first against the edge of the table with practiced precision. A sharp yelp of pain burst from the man's throat, his bravado vanishing in an instant. The bar gasped as one. Conversation stopped. Pool cues dropped. All eyes locked on the scene unfolding before them. The rest of the group froze, their wide-eyed stares fixed on their restrained leader, unsure whether to intervene or back away. For a long second, no one moved. Then Terrence spoke, voice low, firm, and full of quiet command. "I told you to think twice before starting something." He leaned in slightly, not to threaten, but to make himself heard. His grip was solid, not cruel, controlled. "You don't know who you're messing with." The man, Hank, as one of his buddies had called him, squirmed, but it was pointless. Terrence's training left no room for mistakes or escape. From across the room, one of the bikers stepped forward tentatively, hands lifted in a weak attempt at peacemaking. "Hey man," he stammered, "let him go. He didn't mean nothing by it." Terrence's eyes flicked up, locking onto him, calm, clear. "He came at me. You saw it." His voice didn't rise, didn't shake. "If you want him free, tell him to calm down first." Behind the bar, the bartender, still clutching the phone, finally broke his silence. "Maybe it's time for all of you to leave, before this turns into something worse." But Hank wasn't done. Even with his face pressed against the wood and his pride bruised, he muttered through clenched teeth, "You think you're better than me just 'cause you served?" Hank snarled through clenched teeth, "Call the cops. This guy just assaulted me. He's wearing a fake uniform, and I want him arrested." Terrence released him with a controlled shove. Hank stumbled forward, catching himself on a nearby stool, clutching his arm as he turned to glare.
"You'll pay for this," he growled, venom in every syllable. The rest of the bikers moved in behind him, emboldened, now that the tables had turned, at least in their minds. One of them fumbled out a phone, hands trembling as he dialed. "Yeah, we've got a guy here impersonating a soldier," he said loudly, eyeing the crowd. "And he just assaulted my friend." The words echoed through the bar. Terrence remained still, posture relaxed, but inside his mind raced. He knew how this looked, knew how easily perception could twist the truth, but he also knew he had done nothing wrong. Years of service, sacrifices made, discipline forged under fire. It would all hold up. He just had to stay calm. Around him, the bar came alive with hushed voices. Patrons whispered to one another, eyes darting between Terrence and the bikers. Some looked uneasy, unsure what to believe. Others glanced at Terrence with a quiet kind of respect, like they had just seen the truth of him, in how effortlessly he handled the confrontation. He didn't need to defend himself to the room, but he might have to explain himself to whoever walked through the door next. But no one stepped forward, no one challenged what had happened. Outside, the rising wail of sirens sliced through the thick silence.
Red and blue lights pulsed through the bar's windows, casting shifting shadows across the floor and walls. The door swung open with authority. Two officers entered. The first, a broad-shouldered man with a buzz cut and mirrored sunglasses, moved with practiced confidence. The second, a woman with sharp features and steady eyes, scanned the room like she was piecing together a puzzle before anyone spoke. Their presence was like a switch. The chatter died instantly. "We got a call about an altercation," the male officer announced, his tone firm but professional. "Can someone explain what happened?" Hank jumped in before anyone else could. Still cradling his wrist, red-faced and breathless, he pointed a trembling finger at Terrence. "That guy assaulted me, and he's impersonating a soldier. Look at him. No boots, no tags, he's a fraud." The officer turned to Terrence, who remained beside his table, calm, still, unshaken. His hands were loose at his sides, his shoulders squared, not defensive, but grounded. "Is that true?" the officer asked evenly. Terrence met his eyes. "No, sir." He spoke clearly, each word measured but firm. "They confronted me, said I wasn't a real soldier. When this man tried to grab me, I restrained him. That's it." The female officer stepped forward. Her eyes moved across the faces in the room, watching for flickers of truth or guilt. "Did anyone witness what actually happened?" she asked, her voice calm but commanding, cutting clean through the silence. The bartender finally spoke, his words steady but firm. "I saw the whole thing. Hank went after him first. That soldier just defended himself. It wasn't an assault." A ripple of agreement moved through the bar. From near the jukebox, a regular added, "Yeah, he didn't start anything. Hank's been itching for a fight since he walked in." The male officer turned back to Terrence. "Do you have any proof of your service, sir?" Terrence nodded and motioned toward the duffel at his feet, his movements deliberate and non-threatening. "In that bag, my service uniform with name and rank. I've also got my military ID and wallet. You're welcome to check." The officer knelt, unzipped the bag, and pulled out a neatly folded uniform. The name patch, rank insignia, and campaign ribbons left little room for doubt. He glanced at his partner, who gave a single confident nod. "You're clear," the officer said, straightening. His tone was respectful now. "We appreciate your cooperation." Hank, still clutching his wrist and his pride, barked out, "You're just gonna take his word for it? He could have faked that!" The female officer turned on him, her voice sharp. "Enough! From what I've heard, you instigated this, and you're lucky he's not pressing charges against you." Her words landed like a punch. Hank's defiance wavered, shrinking under the weight of the room's judgment.
The other bikers shifted where they stood, suddenly quiet, suddenly small.
No one looked at Terrence.
"Here's how this is going to go," the male officer continued. "We'll file an incident report. If you want to pursue your claim, you're welcome to. But be aware, false accusations carry consequences."
Hank opened his mouth, then shut it again. The officers gave the bar one last sweeping glance. The air had changed. The tension hadn't just broken, it had been corrected. The female officer turned to Terrence.
"Thank you for keeping your cool,"
she said, her voice softer now.
"We'll make sure this is documented properly."
Terrence gave her a small nod, his composure steady.
"Thank you, officer."
The bikers began to shuffle out of the bar, their swagger gone, replaced by awkward silence. Hank lingered just long enough to throw one last glare over his shoulder before disappearing through the door. The officers followed, leaving the bar to slowly settle back into its familiar rhythm. Terrence returned to his seat,
His drink remained untouched, condensation trailing down the glass. Though the tension had passed, its weight still clung to the air around him. He exhaled slowly. Whispers moved through the room. Where there had once been suspicion, now there was something quieter. Respect. A few nods in his direction. Averted eyes. No one approached, but something had shifted. A few days later, Terrence knelt beside his old pickup truck, a wrench in hand and grease smudged on his forearm. The sun was low over Fayetteville, North Carolina, casting long shadows across his quiet yard. He adjusted a bolt beneath the hood, the metal warm beneath his fingers. The bar incident still lingered, not because it had shaken him, but because it reminded him of something deeper. The way people judged, on sight. The way appearances could erase stories, sacrifice, and truth. He'd learned long ago not to carry bitterness, but he wasn't blind to the reality either. The crunch of tires on gravel broke his thoughts. He straightened slowly, wiping his hands on a rag as a dusty sedan pulled up at the edge of his driveway. The driver's door opened, and out stepped a man, mid-30s, jeans, ball cap, a little hesitation in his walk. "Hey," the man called, stopping a few feet away. "You probably don't remember me, but I was at Elliott's the other night, near the jukebox." Terrence nodded once, cautious but open. "I didn't say anything then," the man continued, "but I should have. You handled yourself with a lot more grace than most would have. Just wanted to say thanks, and welcome home." There was a beat of silence, heavy in meaning. Then Terrence gave a faint smile. "Appreciate that," he said. The man nodded, stepped back into his car, and drove off, leaving Terrence alone again in the golden hush of the evening.
But the weight on his shoulders felt just a little lighter. He straightened up, wiping his hands on a rag, and turned toward the sound of a motorcycle pulling into the driveway. It was one of the men from the bar. The rider was lean, with thinning hair and a leather jacket that hung off his frame like it belonged to someone else. Terrence recognized him. Bill, one of Hank's crew. Bill cut the engine and swung his leg over the bike, pausing with his helmet still in hand. There was hesitation in his steps as he approached, the cautious kind, like someone nearing a dog that might bite. "Terrence, right?" he asked, his voice low. Terrence nodded, but said nothing. He watched. Bill cleared his throat, shifting awkwardly. I wanted to come by and say I'm sorry. About what happened at the bar." Terrence raised an eyebrow. Not hostile, but guarded. "You were part of it." Bill nodded, guilt already settling in his features. "Yeah, I didn't step in. I just let it happen. Hank's always had a way of stirring things up, and I went along with it. But that doesn't make it right." He looked down, then back up, eyes earnest. "I've been thinking about it a lot, ever since that night. You didn't deserve that. None of it." Terrence studied him, quiet for a long beat. Bill shifted, clearly uncomfortable under the weight of silence. "Why now?" Terrence asked finally. His tone wasn't cold, just honest. Bill took a breath. "Because I saw how you handled it. You didn't throw a punch until you had no choice. You didn't even press charges. You showed more control than the rest of us combined. And honestly, it made me feel like a coward." He looked away, then added, "I figured the least I could do was own up to it. Face you like a man." Another pause. Terrence nodded once, slowly. "That takes something." Relief flickered in Bill's eyes, faint but real. "I'm not asking for anything," he said. "Just wanted to say my piece." He turned back toward his bike, slipping on his helmet. As the engine rumbled back to life, Bill called over the noise, "Take care of yourself, soldier." Terrence watched him pull out of the driveway and disappear down the road. The dust settled behind him, but the weight of the moment didn't. It was small, an apology, but in a world that rarely offered second thoughts, it meant more than Bill probably realized. Terrence asked, his tone steady. Bill shrugged.
eyes dropping to his boots. "Because it's the right thing to do," he said quietly. "And because, well, seeing how you handled yourself." He paused, then looked up. "It made me realize how wrong we were. You didn't deserve any of that."
For a long moment, Terrence said nothing. Then he exhaled and leaned against the truck, crossing his arms.
"What do you want from me, Bill?" Bill shifted, uneasy. Forgiveness, maybe. But more than that, I want to be better. I've seen a lot of hate in my life. I don't want to add to it anymore. What we did was wrong. I need to own that. Terrence's expression softened just slightly. He'd heard apologies before, some sincere, some hollow, but this felt different. Not because of the words, but because of the fact that Bill had shown up at all. "I appreciate you coming here," Terrence said finally. "It doesn't erase what happened, but it's a start." Bill nodded, a wave of quiet relief passing over his face. "Thanks, man. I mean it." He turned and mounted his bike. The engine rumbled to life, and after one last glance back, Bill rode off down the quiet road. Terrence stood watching him go, a mix of emotions stirring in his chest. The incident at the bar had been a harsh reminder of the prejudice he still faced, but Bill's apology, that small act of accountability, was something else, a flicker of hope. A step, however small, towards something better. He turned back to the truck, wiping his hands on the rag as the evening settled around him. The air was calm, the fading sun casting a warm glow over the yard, the hum of cicadas echoing softly through the trees. Terrence felt a quiet resolve take root. The battles weren't always fought on foreign soil. Sometimes they happened in bars, in driveways, in the hearts of ordinary people. And as far as Terrence was concerned, those battles mattered just as much. Because how you stand, calm, honest, unshaken, could change things. Maybe not all at once, but one person at a time.